Welcome to Watches with Dennis, and today we are going to talk about the Rolex Daytona and whether or not we are seeing a price decline on that like we are seeing on a lot of other watches. The Daytona is something that viewers have requested me to cover, so here we are, we're going to tackle it. And in terms of what sort of Daytonas we're going to look at, I decided to focus in on stainless steel models that are automatic, so we're going to examine three. We're going to do them in chronological order, so we'll do the 16520, followed by the 116-520, and we'll end with the 116-500LN. Starting with the 16520, this is sometimes known as the Rolex Daytona Zenith. It uses the caliber 4130. That was a El Primero Zenith designed movement that was heavily modified by Rolex. I believe this reference was in production for quite a while. So let's go ahead and look at the market average for the last 6 months for the 16520. At the start of my snapshot, which was November 18th, 2021, my market average pricing for the 16520 was $43,111. This watch actually hit its peak pricing on April 28th, 2022, which was $50,580. And as of May 16th, 2022, the price has slipped down to $45,303. So the Daytona 16520 is showing a price decline, but it's only been going on for just under a month at this point. It has fallen over 10% since that high point at the end of April. However, compared to the start of the 6-month period, it's still over 5% above what it was mid-November. So let's jump to the Rolex Daytona 116-520. It was at this point where Rolex unveiled the caliber 4130, their in-house developed movement, but this is where we still saw the non-ceramic steel bezels. Now this model retailed at the time for approximately $12,000. At the start of our snapshot period, again November 18th, 2021, the watch was trading at about $28,785. It peaked much like the 16520 on April 28th, 2022, this one at $35,075, and it has fallen since then with a price as of May 16th of $33,777. So the Daytona 116-520 remains over 17% higher than it was at the start of the 6-month examination period, but over the last several weeks, it has fallen from its peak price level by about 4%. And finally, let's go ahead and look at the Rolex Daytona 116-500LN. This is the current iteration of the Rolex Daytona. This reference continues to use the caliber 4130. However, the most notable physical difference is the use of a ceramic bezel insert. This watch currently retails for approximately $14,550. It started the 6-month examination period in mid-November of 2021 at $35,682. This Daytona actually reached peak pricing earlier than the other two reference numbers we've examined, this one peaking out at March 18th, 2022 at $49,466, and its current May 16th price is approximately $44,384. Now, like the other two reference numbers, the watch is still trading above where it was in mid-November. It has gone up, actually, about 24%. However, since its peak price rate, it has fallen by over 10%. This graph shows you all three Rolex Daytona reference numbers I've been discussing. It shows you the starting price point and the current price points. And you can see the trend lines with the various snapshots that were used in my analysis, represented by the dots. In all cases, the Rolex Daytonas are currently selling for significantly more now than they did in mid-November. And I'm defining significantly by the fact that they are all thousands of dollars more. While we are seeing price declines on all three models recently, some of this is very recent. The 116-520 and the 16520 both have not been having their decline extend out a month yet, though I do expect it to. And the 116-500LN has had a longer period of decline. However, it also has not gone on particularly long when you consider the full breadth of the 6-month period. In terms of affordability, the 116-520 remains and has remained the entire 6-month period the lowest cost option available. The 116-500LN, which is the current Rolex Daytona, has traded places with the 16520, which is the oldest Rolex Daytona in my examination period, in terms of which one is actually running the most in terms of dollar amount. Currently, the 16500 LN is approximately $1,000 less than the much older 16520. Now, in terms of my predictions, I think all three of these reference numbers will continue to slide down in price. None of these reference numbers have seen their pricing fall off of a cliff, and I don't expect them to fall off of a cliff. While they are all starting to trend down, and there's nothing in the broad-based market that makes me think that trending will reverse, these are very popular watches. I think it's important for folks to remember that the Rolex Daytona was a difficult-to-get watch for years before the pandemic. And so while the Rolex Daytona is swept up in the same sort of phenomenon of hype watches and sort of ridiculous pricing that we've been seeing, it was a really popular watch before everyone kind of got on the bandwagon of watches as an asset, watches as investment, watches as a way to make money. So it was always hard to get. I think it's just something really important to remember. And so because of that, I think there's going to be a lot of resiliency in the lines. I do think they're going to fall just because they've gone up so much in terms of percentage versus where they used to be at. But in terms of where Rolex Daytona is relative to other popular watches, I just think it's going to be more resistant to seeing severe price declines. In terms of the question of, do I think these prices are going to get down below where they were 6 months ago? I'll say yes, but obviously I'm much more hesitant about that. Logically speaking, because the 16500 LN is still in production, it in theory has the most potential to see price decline because Rolex is continuing to issue more and more of those watches, whereas the 16520 and the 16520 have a finite supply available. We've seen the largest decline percentage-wise from peak in the 16520 and the 16500 LN. Those have both gone down double-digit percentages versus the peak amounts that we saw not that long ago. But I think it's worth noting that the 16520's current price, percentage-wise, isn't really that different from where it was 6 months ago. That one's the closest to it, but it also is the oldest model. So we're talking about approximately a $2,000 spread from where it is now versus where it was in mid-November. It wouldn't take much, obviously, for it to finally fall below that level. So in terms of raw dollars, that one's pretty close. Whereas the 16500 LN, even though it is the current production model and in theory should be the one that could be the most flexible on decline as more and more units are released, it also still continues to be $9,000 approximately more than it was in mid-November. It has finally fallen slightly below the amount of the 16520. I expect the gap between those two to continue to grow and the 16520 to remain the most expensive of these three reference numbers. I think the potential is there for the 16500 LN to actually get below the 16520, but if I were to guess, it will take months for it to do that, if it's even going to. Again, my thinking is the 16520 isn't made anymore. So in theory, if all things were equal, it would have the potential to have a higher price point than something that's still in production. But that said, perhaps the ceramic bezel is just a far more popular choice for keeping the watch looking new. And so the 16500 LNs may just be more popular than the 16520s, especially since they seem to use the same movement as near as I could tell from my research. So you're not really getting anything different between the two other than really the bezel and maybe some other minor changes that I'm not particularly familiar with. So given all of that, if those are kind of seen as one and the same, the 16520 might just be less popular because it shows scratches easier and might remain the cheapest of the three choices. And so if you are looking secondhand for a Daytona, that may continue to be the best deal that you can get in terms of raw dollars. But anyway, that's all I wanted to cover in this video. If you have any thoughts, questions, or want to give your feedback, please leave a comment. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. And otherwise, I'll just say take care, everybody.